I've been here longer than most can remember, rooted at the edge of Manhattan's Central Park, where the city's chaos meets moments of tranquility. I'm just an old oak tree, silent witness to countless human stories. My bark has absorbed decades of whispers, tears, laughter. The 1970s were different. The air was heavier then, filled with different sounds and scents. That's when I first noticed her, Sarah. She couldn't have been more than 16, with auburn hair that caught the afternoon light, and a notebook always clutched against her chest. While other teenagers hurried past, Sarah would sit beneath my branches, her back against my trunk, writing furiously as if the words might escape if she didn't capture them quickly enough. I've felt the pressure of thousands of bodies leaning against me over the years, but hers I remember distinctly. The gentle way she'd settle against my bark, careful not to disturb the moss growing at my base. The way she'd look up through my branches, searching for something between the leaves and sky that only she could see. Spring rain would come, sending everyone running for shelter, but not Sarah. She'd just pull her jacket over her notebook and continue writing, letting the drops fall around her. I'd try to shelter her as best I could, though my leaves weren't always enough. It was in the autumn of 1974 when she came with someone else, a young man with glasses too large for his face and hands that moved expressively when he spoke. Michael, she called him. They sat beneath me for hours, their voices rising and falling like the wind through my branches. I want to write stories that make people feel less alone, she told him, her fingers tracing patterns on my roots that emerged from the soil. You will, he said, with such certainty that even I believed it. They carved their initials into my bark that day, S+M, not deep enough to truly hurt, just enough to leave a mark. I've carried their symbol through decades, through harsh winters and scorching summers. Even now, though weathered and stretched by my growth, those letters remain. They came together through changing seasons. I watched their whispered conversations, the slow intertwining of fingers, the hesitant first kiss beneath my branches during a summer sunset. I witnessed their dreams exchanged like precious gifts, his medical school aspirations, her desire to create stories that would outlive her. Some days they'd bring books, reading passages aloud to each other, Fitzgerald, Plath, Baldwin, their voices giving life to words printed on pages, words that somehow seemed to sink into my rings, becoming part of my very being. Winter of 1976 brought the change. Sarah came alone, her face drawn, eyes rimmed red. She sat against me for hours in the bitter cold, her breath forming clouds that disappeared too quickly. No notebook this time. Only a letter clutched so tightly her knuckles turned white. He was going to California. Stanford Medical School had accepted him. They had discussed long distance, but something in her face told me the conversation hadn't ended well. It's not about the distance, she whispered to me, though she didn't know I was listening. It's about the different directions. That day, she dug a small hole between two of my largest roots. With trembling hands, she placed the unopened letter inside, his final words to her that she couldn't bear to read. She covered it with earth, pressed it down firmly, and let tears fall onto the freshly disturbed soil. The city changed around us. The park grew quieter, more dangerous at night. Fewer people lingered. The graffiti on nearby benches came and went, but I remained, guarding her buried secret, feeling it become part of my underground network, another story preserved in my keeping. She didn't come back that spring, or the next. The 70s faded into the 80s. I grew taller, wider, my roots pushing deeper, carefully cradling the letter that had begun to dissolve into the earth, its ink bleeding into my system like a memory becoming part of me. Years passed in the rhythm only trees can truly understand. Seasons blurred together, thousands of days of sunshine, rain, snow, countless faces passing beneath my branches. Children who once climbed me grew up and brought children of their own. But none of them was Sarah. I remembered her in sensory fragments. The specific weight of her back against my trunk, the scratch of her pen on paper, the scent of her perfume that lingered hours after she'd gone. Sometimes when the wind blew just right, I could almost hear the echo of her voice reading poetry aloud. The letter beneath my roots slowly became part of me, its secrets absorbed into my being. Whatever words Michael had written, declarations of love, painful goodbyes, promises never to be kept, they became encoded in my heartwood, indecipherable to anyone but me. In 1994, they installed a bench near me. People would sit, check their watches, make calls on increasingly smaller phones. The city's rhythm accelerated while I remained, growing at my own unhurried pace. Occasionally, someone would notice the faded S+M carving and trace it with curious fingers, never knowing the story behind those simple marks. The decades brought storms that tore at my branches, droughts that stressed my leaves, but I endured. Central Park changed around me, renovations, new paths, different patterns of human movement. Yet I remained a constant, holding Sarah's memory and her buried heartbreak among my roots. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of women with auburn hair, and my rings would tighten with anticipation, but it was never her. As the new millennium arrived, I wondered if I'd fabricated Sarah from decades of human stories, if she'd become just another ghost in my memory. It was spring 2023 when I felt familiar footsteps approaching, slower now, more measured, but with the same distinctive pause before settling down. An elderly woman with silver-streaked auburn hair carefully lowered herself to sit at my base. Her fingers, now lined with age but still graceful, touched my bark with recognition. "Hello, old friend," she whispered. Sarah had returned, carrying the weight of decades in the fine lines around her eyes, in the careful way she moved. She wore success in her dignified posture. I later overheard someone nearby recognizing her as the famous author. She'd achieved her dream after all. She wasn't alone. A young woman accompanied her, mid-20s perhaps, with Sarah's eyes and jawline but darker hair. "This is where I used to write," Sarah told her. "Under this exact tree." "The one from your memoirs?" the younger woman asked. "Where you and grandfather?" Sarah nodded, her hand moving instinctively to the spot where the carving remained, finding it with unerring accuracy despite the passage of 47 years. "He never made it to California," Sarah said softly. "The accident happened 3 days after he gave me his goodbye letter. I couldn't bear to read it, so I buried it here." The younger woman, her granddaughter, placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Grandpa Michael would have loved knowing you became the writer you always wanted to be." I felt Sarah's surprise vibrate through my roots. "What did you call him?" "Michael, that was his name, wasn't it?" "The boy who gave you the letter?" Sarah shook her head slowly. "No, sweetheart. Michael was the one I stayed with. The letter was from David, the one I let go." That afternoon, as the spring sun began to set, Sarah returned with a small garden trowel. Carefully, respectfully, she began to dig between my roots, in exactly the spot where she'd buried the letter all those years ago. What she did not know, could not know, was that while the paper had long since disintegrated, I had preserved something else. As she dug, her trowel struck something solid. A small metal box that hadn't been there before, formed over decades from discarded coins that had fallen near my roots, minerals in the soil, transformed by my own slow alchemy. Inside was not the letter she had buried, but something I had created from its essence. Crystallized sap that had somehow captured the final words never read, preserved in amber-like translucence. Impossible by human understanding, perhaps, but trees hold mysteries humans have yet to comprehend. Sarah visits me regularly now, sometimes alone, sometimes with her granddaughter. She brings a small folding chair and sits beneath my branches, reading or simply watching people pass by. Occasionally, she touches the crystallized memory she keeps on a chain around her neck. I've witnessed nearly a century of human lives, their fleeting joys and sorrows, their connections made and broken. I've seen the city transform around me, watched children grow old beneath my branches, but Sarah's story remains etched most deeply in my rings. I am just an oak tree. I cannot move from this spot or speak the thousands of stories I've witnessed, but I can hold memories in my own way, in my heartwood, my roots, my very being. I stand as testament to the truth that nothing truly disappears, it merely transforms. And when the wind blows just right through my leaves, those who listen closely might hear what sounds like whispered words, the voices of the past preserved in wood and memory, still speaking to those willing to hear. The letters S+M remain in my bark, now stretched and faded, but permanent, a reminder that love, like trees, continues growing long after humans believe the story has ended.